So I said, okay, if we can reduce pain, you can't have pain unless you have inflammation. Pain is a byproduct of inflammation. So if you have any pain in your body, you have inflammation in your body. So if we're going to reduce pain, and Dr. Steven Sinatra was very helpful in helping me understand this. He was a cardiologist, and he said, if you're going to research pain, you got to look at this inflammation, because you can't have pain unless you have the inflammation. And so I started looking at that. Then I realized that basically when we're grounding somebody, what we're doing, because these reactive oxygen species, they're electrically charged. They're going to rip electrons away, and they're going to create this oxidative burst. And it's very crude. This is part of the innate immune system that goes back to the beginning, and so it's very crude, and it oxidizes, it burns things, it tears them apart, or rips them apart with acid. So I thought, okay, what's happening here? The reason the inflammation is manifesting is because when I ground somebody, what I'm doing is I'm like putting their hand on the dirt, and their body, the skin, is conductive, so it's absorbing electrons into the body, and it goes into the bloodstream. And we've actually done studies on this, showing how within just a few minutes it normalizes blood viscosity. The thickness of your blood automatically normalizes as soon as you put your hands and feet on the earth, and that's because these electrons are coming into the body, and then the blood is circulating once a minute, and all these free electrons are now flowing through the body, and after half a dozen circulation, then is pretty well distributed. So the first thing that happens is the blood thins, because now the blood cells repel each other, because they have more increased negative charges. They're like the earth itself. They're like a miniature earth, an electrical charge on the surface and negative electrical charge on the surface. So now when they get close to each other, they repel each other like negative magnets. But if you don't have enough electrons, the little red blood cells will share electrons and stick together. And that's what's called rouleau formations, or thick and sticky blood, all that kind of stuff. That does not exist in the natural world. Thick and sticky blood does not exist in nature.
This is the Zeta potential that you're describing, the idea that you can measure the charge on the outside of a red blood cell. And from your work, I learned about experiments that have been done with grounding, where this measured Zeta potential, and this is not pseudoscience, this is medical literature science, right?
Yes.
So isn't it true that studies have been done, maybe Steven Sinatra did this study, where you can take someone who is not grounded, that is wearing insulated shoes or not touching the earth for some amount of time, and I want to talk about how long we should ground for, and you can measure the Zeta potential, this electrical charge on the outside of the red blood cells. Most people know that the red blood cells carry oxygen in your blood. And then you can ground them, and you can see the Zeta potential, the electrical charge on the outside of a red blood cell change. That's pretty wild to me. And this is what you're describing. So I just want to clarify it for listeners that this probably accounts for the change in the viscosity of the blood. We learn about this rouleau formation in medical school. I believe it's spelled Rouleux. And we learned about something called the erythrocyte sedimentation rate, the avidity, the speed with which red blood cells will clump together. And this is a measure of inflammation. This is a measure of sort of how, quote, inflamed the blood is. But it's interesting to me that in these dark field images, which is a special type of microscope, I guess, that you can use to look at red blood cells, you can see changes in the way that these red blood cells associate with each other when someone is grounded versus not. That's pretty mind-boggling to me. Did I describe that right? Am I thinking about that properly?
Yeah, you're right on. That's what blew our minds. We said that should have been the discovery of the century, because just simple standing on the earth normalizes blood viscosity. Well, half the population out there is on a blood thinner of some kind.